Once upon a quantum leap, we took a look at creative mind reports. We're going to look at all kinds of elements of creative mind, what that is, what helps it flow, what helps creations in your life manifest a little bit smoother. We're going to investigate all of that.
Yep. And I like to refer to it as the inner eco creative landscape within each
Yeah.
one of us. So that's what I like to call it. So that's what we're going to dive into a little bit more. So, this wonderful world of space, divine time, trust, all of the wonderful things that a creative individual desires to bring into this world, we're going to talk about that as well.
Stay tuned.
Creative mind reports.
Yes.
Why am
This
I
is a good one.
Yeah, why am I so drawn to this one in another way? Probably because I am a creative expression person, as are
Mhm.
you, as are all of us, but it's just something that I really do identify with the most. So I this is near and dear to my heart. So these two reports, because we're going to share two reports, two different individuals. And thank you in advance to both of you for sharing because I think what both of these reports will bring to anyone who's listening is the essence that every single one of us has within us a wholeness that already exists. We are whole and complete. And what these creative mind reports will give us insight into this inner landscape. Like we talked about the health analysis previously, but this is an inner galactic space landscape that has so many mysteries. It has a mysticism to it that I think all of us are constantly yearning to understand when we're in this space of how do I create the things that I really want to do that will help a lot of other people, help
Yeah.
me, but how can I access more of this creative energy? And so for me, what I like to call that inquiry or that desire is that desire to know more about our relationship with all of creation or creator. And the individual is going to have a responsibility of diving back into themselves, into this inner eco landscape, and then expressing it outward of what they're experiencing, what they're trying to harmonize with, what they're trying to navigate through. And that's what I think we'll find in these two intuitive reports is different individuals who have what I'm going to say is the same desire to be connected, not just connected because we're already connected to this wholeness of creation, but how individually they can express what they feel is important to express and to share for the evolution of not just humanity, but let's take it down to their own individual worlds, to the communities that they're within that they think, God, this community could benefit from this idea that I have.
Yeah, that's a common link between the reports is that both of them really have this expansive view of what their influence could be in their communities. And I think anyone who requests a creative mind report is feeling a little frustrated with how things are flowing, how their expression is flowing, and also just how things are manifesting, maybe the speed at which things are manifesting, or there's some blockages that you sense and you don't quite know what these blockages are
Mm-hmm.
inside of you, around you. And so you request one of these creative mind reports that goes really deep inside the mind, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even back, both of them discuss like where things come from, the formless, the formless void, even where this energy and this consciousness and this well-being come from originally.
Right.
So they get very deep. I think a lot of people that I found that request creative mind, they have no idea how deep it goes. They just go, I'm dissatisfied with my creativity. How can I be a little better with this? And then in comes this very deep, giant report that's um, gives them a lot to look at for years and years and years afterwards.
Yeah, no, in the spiritual teaching world, the terminology that's used often is the inner landscape, the inner outer landscape, how to cooperate with this inner landscape and how to express it in the outer landscape. Uh, but again, to what you said, there's a, and when I say depth, I do not want to discredit um, wherever you are in your understanding of this inner landscape. But I'm also here to say that whatever you think you know, or you think you have an understanding about this inner landscape, there is so much more to know and to open yourself up to.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we'll talk a little bit about this conscious ego, this part of ourselves that interferes, stays in the way. We're intellectualizing this creative process at times, and that's maybe we're not even aware that we're doing that. And that's even in and of itself an interference of the fluidity of this inner landscape. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about how the ego can interfere.
Hmm.
Um,
Have you
and,
ever,
oh
I'm
yeah,
going to
go ahead.
interrupt here,
No.
but I just had this thought. Have you run across in your years as an art instructor and an art department leader and all of this, have you found a lot of people that just say, "Oh, I'm not creative," where they just summarily just say, "I'm not a creative type," or I'm not creative."
So short answer, yes. And it starts off at a very young age. So when I was in the classroom, I remember that was a desire I had because kids, I mean little, because I used to teach ECE all the way through high school. So ECE all the way through high school, somewhere in that space of time, kids were told, I don't know how to draw well, or I'm not a good artist, or
Yeah.
how can I be a good artist like you? Or I'm not good at this. I'm better at this. I mean, whatever words would be said, I would just wonder to myself, I, that's not true. But anyway, so what I would do, so short answer, yes, I would run into it. And one way that I tried to solve that, at least in the classroom, is every year I would create a piece of artwork, and that would be my running theme for the entire school year for all grades that I taught.
Hmm.
So one particular year, I made a bigger piece of artwork and I used there were no erasers used. So different type of mediums, whether it was pen, pencil, at times it was a little bit of watercolor, but there was no I made it a point. I'm not erasing anything. I'm going to use the same paper. I'm not going to start over. And my whole theme for that year was about trust. Just trust your mark making skill. And so for that whole year, any kind of teaching activity was geared towards asking every student when they were working to just trust their mark making skill. And if a little pencil line or a pen mark or something was like, because sometimes kid would get so frustrated with this process of creating.
Hmm. Yeah.
And my goal was, it's okay to go through the process, but it's also really okay to know that that's little distraction in this flow of energy that's coming through you.
Yeah. That judgment voice
That
gets in there.
judgment voice gets in there.
Yeah.
And my goal at the end of the year was that everyone walked away knowing that that they were already creative and they had that creative ability as long as they mentally let go of an eraser.
Hmm.
Not that
Hmm.
erasers are bad, but if you could mentally let go of an eraser and trust that whatever mark making you are creating, it will be what it's going to be and it will still move out the way it needs to be if you
Yeah.
could learn to cooperate with it.
I would think writers come across that all the time where you've got the blank page syndrome, you know.
Yeah.
What am I going to write? I've decided I'm going to write 500 words every single day, and then you just sit there and nothing is coming out, and there's a blank page. And then finally something comes out, but the judgy voice comes in, and you just say, "Ah, this is trash. I'm going to trash this." But even that process is part of the process. The process of getting something out, and even judging it and killing it, that is part of the process as well of learning about yourself and also of just sheer letting things flow through.
Right. And that was another thing I would teach is how not to be attached to whatever you're creating. You can,
Hmm.
not to be attached to the thing you have in your head and that it has to look a certain way the way it comes out. And that's again, I'm talking about creative, expressive things now. I imagine if you were in the creative process of being an engineer or an architect, I mean, there's some elements where you still need to cooperate with this image that you have in your mind and how that flows out.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still a process of cooperating with that where it's not so arduous, and
So
that's the part.
these creative mind reports then really investigate idea into like an initial seed idea all the way out into some form that you can look at and how that process happens and then how mind is shaping this process all along the way.
Well, like in all intuitive reports, these two reports, or this report and these specific reports, it does have a seed idea that anchors. So for me, I always like to think when you're requesting a creative mind report that I always start with you have a desire, an initial desire or something that you've already have to work with. And so for one of them, it is the creative expression of gratitude. And the other one is motivated by hope. So both,
Hmm.
that's where they currently are. That's what these reports are saying that for those two people, this is where you currently are. This is what you can anchor to at least for this in the moment.
Yeah.
And then for the report that um, speaks about the creative expression and gratitude, also talks about this intense energy of what this person wants to cultivate has a difficult time of just receiving, that there's something that's ignited and awakened, but there's a interception there where the receiving process is not occurring. So
Yeah,
this
he has this huge vision of what I think it's both what he's capable of and what should be in the world and what people ought to be coming together and the way things ought to be, I think, is a good way of summing it up. He's got
yes.
this vision of how things are headed and should be, and it's just not arriving fast enough, and he gets frustrated with that
So
sometimes.
think about this inner creative substance, this inner landscape as something you're going to plant a seed in. So with the first intuitive report about this creative expression of gratitude, the one we're just talking about, he's planted this idea of like, I'm planting this idea of this great thing I want to do. Like I'm
Hmm.
planting this into I'm planting this idea within me, this substance of mind. I'm planting it. So imagine, Paul, that I want to give you this great gift, this great idea. And
Hmm.
it's so great that it's in
Hmm.
your face. I'm giving it to you with that much magnitude and forcefulness. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
And what I'm by doing this intensity, by just wanting it to happen and for you to see how great this is, and this thing is that I'm giving you, I'm not allowing the space to receive from you, Paul. Like, hey, Capucine, thank you. I get what you're doing here.
Yeah.
There's no space for giving and receiving because my intensity is so great that
The
I
emphasis is on the giving.
is on the
Uh,
giving.
Yeah.
And the
Interesting.
Yeah, and so again back to this landscape, this inner landscape, when you put so much emphasis into this inner creation story that you keep consciously kind of feeding to yourself, that's another way of interrupting with this process.
Hmm. Hmm. I see the connection between these two reports there as well. With both of these guys are very generous and they want to give, give, give in bigger and bigger and bigger ways. Uh, and yeah, both of these guys are pretty intense, I would say. I
Mm-hmm.
know both of them. and both of them really want something to happen, something big to happen from their efforts. Um,
And again, the intention is good. The intention, the desire
yeah,
goes
it's
back to,
big. It's good.
I really want to do something good. But
Hmm.
again, this goes back to what's what's interfering in that
Yes.
good
And
kind
that's
of,
really what the Creative Mind Report
that's it.
is designed for, is saying, okay, let's take a look at your flow here, and
Yeah.
where's the hose crimped here.
And individually, every one of us, and again, you and I, Paul, are not excluded from this. When we want to create something and we want to give something for the goodness of whatever, I mean, we just want to give in a really good way. We all have our little obstacles that will challenge us, that either interfere with this flow. And so in the one report of the person that has the rooted in the creative expression and gratitude, it gets something. And I have to read this paragraph because it says a lot about the inner landscape, but it says it in this way. There is a space in the manifestation process where that which is moving and developing is formless or more abstract. This is tied to the energies of the cube and the icosahedron. It would be helpful for this one to rest the attention with the intention of harmonizing with these points of creation so that this one understands more completely the timing of the cube energy. There is a fascination that this one has with this that can be built upon, and it can be the doorway into deeper acceptance of formlessness. Now, what does that mean? And
I don't know. No,
I'm going to tell you
I've
how
got some ideas. Yeah.
I've got some ideas. Can I tell you what mine
Yeah. Yeah.
is? I'm going to go back to my teaching days with little kids saying, I'm not creative. I don't know how to, whatever.
Hmm.
And in the visual art world, there's this thing called the elements and principles of art. And this is taught in a formality way that those things are called line, space, shape, form, texture, value, color. There's 7 of them. But what I decided to do with those is I thought, really, that's the space creation process if you put it in this order. And everything begins in space. There is a space where things get manifested. So an idea is whole and complete in and of itself. So this great idea that begins in this space, and it's already whole and complete. It's already there. But as it moves through this substance, it
Hmm.
needs to reach out, hence the line. It needs to start taking shape. So then it creates a shape, let's call it a shaped triangle. These lines are connected. It's like, I've got this idea. How am I going to externalize it? So you start reaching out to different people or different tools, whatever it is your creation is. You start talking to people.
Hmm.
And this seed idea, let's call it a little dot that's already whole and complete, starts moving out of itself, it starts creating outward. And before you know it, you've got a shape that's been developed. It could be a triangle, but it's flat. There's no dimension. It could be a square. And then the more you start adding more substance to it, you're giving it some attention, but you're cooperating with it. It takes on a form. It has more dimensionality to it. So space, line, shape, form.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that occurs with every human being, whether you are aware of it or not. It is constantly occurring. The thing is, for those of us who are creative and we want to know how we can cooperate with this process, is that we are becoming more aware that there's a disruption in how you are interfering with those stages of that process of creation within that space.
Yeah.
The individual expression, then texture, value, color, is just that. It's the individual expression. I want my house to look purple. I want my house to look blue. I want
Yeah.
my house to
But
have.
originally, you got to build a house.
But
Yeah.
originally, the seed idea was I want a house, I want a home, I want whatever the
Mhm.
creation idea is, it's already whole and complete. But how we cooperate with how we manifest that outward it doesn't just begin in our conscious mind. And that's where sometimes the conscious mind thinks it's the boss and it starts taking over.
Yeah, gets controlling with this process. Yep.
So that's
And I
what I
think
think
that that's where
that
things like divine timing, receptivity, allowing, trusting, all of those sort of softer arts, the softer art and science
Mhm,
of creation, rather than making decisions and gathering resources and putting things together. That's more the conscious mind's specialty, and that's where we're at. Humanity is the conscious mind tends to dominate the
mhm,
creative process, and
mhm.
it tends to, like you said, tends to think it's the boss. When really you got 2/3 of your mind, maybe even more than that, is
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm going to interrupt you. You're the math guy.
yeah.
Talk to me about these geometric shapes and what your thoughts are on how that does relate to this inner landscape, this ecosystem, this inner universe.
I would say you've got something with that reaching out and the seed idea. Um, it's like there's a magnetic charge, if you want to think electrical. As soon as you come up with an idea, there's a polarity to it because it has not yet manifested. And when it's planted into a, a realm of consciousness, it's kind of like it's a guest, but it's sort of like an invader also into that realm.
Mm,
And so the mind tends to coagulate substance around this according to its charge. So maybe the you could think the higher the charge, the more you want this thing, the stronger this charge is, the more substance is going to be attracted to it. And it gets so it collects all the elements that it needs from that level of mind, let's say the third level of mind, and then it has to start emerging into the fourth level, into a little bit denser realm. And it starts picking up energy from that realm as well, and substance from that realm. And so
mm,
each level of mind picks up a little bit more energy, a little bit more momentum, a little bit more substance. Um, if you're visiting that thought and if you're giving it attention, it can peter out. It can sort of fizzle and break apart. And that's where I think these forms come in to play.
mhm,
If the thought has enough integrity uh, in dimensionality, then it can survive this journey through the birth canal,
mhm,
through this gathering of layers and substance and energy and momentum and light. And
mhm.
if it doesn't have a strong enough shape to it, it may start breaking apart. I know I'm getting very abstract here with a
Mhm.
creation moving through, but that's where I hear this icosahedron and the cube energy. These are shapes that these platonic solids. These are shapes that have proven themselves again and again and again as um, strong and stable, and they have different meanings. They have different um, attributes intrinsically, just these shapes, and you can snap them together and build with these little shapes. You can Minecraft is all about cubes, and icosahedrons. You can build other shapes out of putting these elements together, snapping them together like Legos.
Well, I think in both of these reports, and I like the analogy because I see it. I hope the listener sees what you said, but I do. Well, for the one report making the suggestion of giving attention to these specific geometric shapes,
Hmm.
I think that suggestion is given to that individual because that individual does have some interest in that and has some understandings in that.
Right.
And
He,
again,
he would go, oh, okay,
the
yeah,
intuitive reporter
fifth level
is
or fourth
reporting
level.
back based on, I see that this person can understand this and has some experience with this. Whereas
Yeah.
on the other report, the suggestion is not going to say, focus on the shape, or the form, or
Hmm.
it's not saying that. It is giving a different suggestion. And that suggestion is to settle into the wisdom by settling into suggesting to go into darkness. If you go into darkness, give yourself
Yeah.
some time to just go into darkness. And I think the two together, we talk about what are avenues to experience this space. One avenue is to give attention to these geometric
The
forms.
forms. Yeah.
The other avenue was go into this space and explore this space.
Yeah. And it quite literally did say time alone in the dark.
That's right.
Like,
Time alone,
yeah.
just go into this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think about that example, especially in how nature works. And we've all been little kids before, and we've all, on some level, have this external outer universe looking up into the stars, the night sky, the beautiful vastness of it. It's so big. But it has form, but it's also invisible. And that's also how I think of these geometric shapes. Like
Yeah.
it's expansive, it's big, but yet it has structure to it and it's
Yeah.
working.
I'm sure you've worked with fractals at some point in art, and you zoom into an edge of a line, and you can say, well, if I could build that out of triangles, or I could build that out of squares.
Mhm.
And when you zoom way back, it looks continuous. But when you zoom really, really close, it's
Right.
actually built out of little tiny, tiny, tiny pieces.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's what this is talking about. Each level that your creation, whatever it is, whether
Uh-huh.
you're developing a house, or you're developing a music piece, or you're developing a relationship, or whatever you're building and developing, it's it's adding these little tiny pieces, these in each stage that it's in. Maybe it's in the expansion stage. Maybe you're going, wow, I'm going to take a trip to Switzerland. I could go here, I could go there, I could go anywhere. Wow, there's so many things I could do. That's this expansive, wonderful phase. And so that is going to have a particular geometry to it,
Mhm.
geometric little particles that are attracted to that.
Right.
And then you got to make some decisions. You got to set your budget. You have to book the airline tickets, and um, contact people and put it on the calendar. Those are contracting kinds of elements. And
Mhm.
so that's going to be a different geometric form that's attracted to that phase of your creation where you're making decisions and landing things. It's starting to become real. Like, whoa, I'm actually going to go on this trip. This is actually going to happen.
Well, and to that point, I think that and it even recommends it in the second report about where you're at right now. What really would be helpful if you just appreciated nature. Go out and appreciate nature. There's a wonder in the beauty and the structure of how it cooperates with this vast, expansive, great divine energy of creation. It
Yeah.
does it fluidly. It's not, the tree is not worried about, am I going to be big enough? Am I going to be able to provide shelter for the whole wide world? Am I going to, you
Hmm.
know, provide shelter to someone who has a lot of money versus no money? And, who needs my shelter the most? A tree is being itself, and it's cooperating with itself, and it is being itself,
Yeah.
and it is functioning with these invisible laws of nature.
Yeah.
It's just doing what it needs to do. And that's one of the suggestions in the second report about, hey, all these great things you want to do, but when you get too much into yourself, step out of yourself and go see what's going on in nature. Go see it.
That's a good point. Both the nature point and the stepping outside of yourself point.
Mhm.
The nature, I think, is it's always a good reminder of things are built over time,
Mhm.
bit by bit by bit, and also the bits are elements. They're natural elements, and you have to consider that whatever you're wanting to create has elements to it that need to be timed, the right thing at the right time
Mhm.
for. this creation, whatever creation, whether it's a trip to Switzerland or if it's a manifesting a new job or a relationship.
or
Everything
bring,
has
or
pieces
bringing,
and elements.
yeah, or bringing people together, whatever it is. I
Yeah,
mean, and again, I want to that now I'm glad that you brought that up because of a creative mind report is not intended for someone who is just a visual artist or a musician or
right.
an
Yeah,
ex, a whatever the entertainment world of expression. Um, is not that. It's really for all of us are creative.
yeah.
Every single we are that. It is not
We
that we
are
have to.
created in the image of our creator, so
It's not,
therefore we are creators as well.
you have
That's
all of that
that's
within
just
your
what we
disposal.
do. Yeah,
That's it. All of that is within your disposal. It's how
yeah,
we are cooperating with this creative force that's within us.
yeah.
There was and I think, well, I think of speaking of the entertainment world, some of the examples I have of people in the entertainment world that I have seen that do it really well are really good comedians. Like, was it Gary Shandling? I think was one of them. He just was, his timing was good. He
Hmm.
was kind, he was generous, but there's something that just flowed from him. And then I think of other like good, that's a bad, I don't mean to have that as a judgment on there, but just actors that have people call it the it factor. They
Hmm.
have this thing where they tap into this source so fluidly and it just expresses out of them
Yeah,
so well.
yeah. I think immediately of Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
and I think of how for a little while Tom Hanks disappears, and someone else is there. You know,
Mm,
whether it's Sully is there or Mr. Rogers is there, or the character he's trying to portray is has taken over,
mm,
that the creation has taken precedence over the ego
mhm.
of the person's individuality.
Right. Yeah, and I think with groups too that have some cooperative efforts of creating something together, everyone individually brings something of value. And one of these reports also mentions that one of them would prefer working by themselves and has difficulty when other people come into the
Right.
picture.
Yeah. I
You
totally feel for him.
know?
I know him well, and he would just laugh at that. I'm sure he did laugh at that. But yeah,
but, but we all as creative people have our comfort zones.
he said
Yeah.
a few times, I think, you can work you can work faster alone, but there's an old saying too like this. You can work faster alone, but you can go farther in a group. Like the energy is sustained in a group. So you can do bigger things and you can go farther in a group. But man, if you just want to do it fast, get out of my way. Let me just do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And some of the examples or the suggestions there's much more to creativity and to creative existence than what this one can consciously craft.
Yeah.
This one's fulfillment will come. Again, trusting that whatever you desire and you've set into that seed, that whole seed idea, it will come.
Hmm.
There is success in coming, but what needs to occur is you've got to release. And that release, all of us have that. It comes in the form of a pressure or I need to figure it out. It's different for how it occurs in all of us, but trusting that it will come.
Yeah. I
And,
think that's
and not
the
just
attachment.
right, but not just magically. It's not like I'm just going to wait for it to happen and drop in my
Yeah.
lap.
Oh, that's a good thing to bring up too,
Yes, we
which
talk
is
about that.
the sort of new age idea of if I put it on my vision board, it
Uh-huh.
will manifest.
Right.
Well, that's the starting point. That's that initial seed idea that you put
Mhm.
way deep inside in that third level of consciousness that then needs to grow and mature. And it's our job as a creator, as the guiding intelligence,
Mhm.
to visit that and give it some energy and water that. The seed analogy is really good there. You
Mhm.
plant that seed, you're not just going to leave it. You got to water it. You got to pull the weeds out that might spring up around it while it's germinating, and give it attention. Make sure it has light, make sure it has good air circulation around it, nutrients, food.
In the other report, it says to give more attention, what you're talking about, to give more attention to frequency and the vibration and where this one's awareness rests. And so, what
Yeah,
you are giving and the type of giving you are giving to the
yeah,
seed idea really matters. And then it says all of these energies are always available all the time.
yeah,
Um, so that's another thing. And it's there's no separation between it. It doesn't mean like, well, it's got to go through this level, then I got to go down to second level.
hmm.
It's we say the word levels because when we're trying to describe things, but it's all
It's
fluid,
simultaneous. Yeah,
all simultaneously moving
yeah,
in there. Um, and then it talks about um, because this person, like both of them, have a desire to give something that they have worded in different ways. I want to give divine love, or I want to give people a way to understand creation. I mean, however, they're asking the question, they have this desire to give, this greatness of giving something that they believe is going to really help people in their own healing process for whatever reasons, but they want to give something really big,
yeah.
really
And
for the
lasting.
world and
Yeah.
lasting, right? So an enduring thing. And then it says, would suggest to this one to awaken to the falsity of the boundary of the physical body as
Love
a
that.
container and allow that to dissolve and awaken to the formlessness of the form.
I've heard this in several reports. The suggestion in various phrasings that your physical body is not a container. It's not a bucket that you pour things into. Um, that idea was propagated, I think, in the educational system. Children are empty vessels, and we must pour in this educational
Mm.
stuff into them. And I think it's persisted, especially in our Western culture, that you have to, you are this, uh, you're this individual thing that's walking around on this individual planet, that's in this individual solar system, in this individual galaxy, and there's all these boundary lines. There's these separation lines. Like my body goes out to here, and then there's space, and then there's somebody else. Um, it's not it's not actually true. And science will back me up on this as well. Our electromagnetic field of all of the chemical processes and electrical responses that go on in our bodies, there is a field that is around a living thing that can be measured. How far out it goes, I guess that depends on the instrumentation that you're using, on how you can measure that.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
and that means that we don't have a hard and fast boundary about us as well.
let's all go back to when we were kids. I'm making this assumption that we've all done this on some point. So forgive me if you haven't. If you have not, try it now. If you're not driving your car and if the sunlight is out. The experience is we're all laying out on a nice warm day and the sun is shining and we've got some clouds out there. And we're all looking up into the sky and we play the game. Hey, can you see that shape in the cloud? Hey, can you see that shape in the cloud?
Hmm.
So the formlessness, that there is a formlessness of the form, you start seeing forms, but yet that cloud has no form. So
You're going to go Taoist on me here.
it's really so beautiful to see that, again, all of creation is always working if we take the time to look at how it just is constantly operating. And our attachment to wanting to see the form,
Make sense of
make
the
sense
thing.
of it, and
Yeah,
I've got to see it, or what's the evidence if I can't see it or touch it or feel it. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying that when we become too attached to that is the final product. That's the thing that will make this all real.
yeah.
That's the delusion we're living in.
That I think also with the attachment to how I'm going to feel once this thing is here.
Hmm.
That can be an attachment, an emotional attachment to
Right.
this. Once this thing that I'm working on is here, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be satisfied. Then I'll be fulfilled. And I think what the hope creative mind is suggesting is rest your fulfillment more on the process rather than the eventual thing that is going to manifest. Actually,
Mhm.
both of them talk about
Right.
that too.
Right. And it also talks about practical ways. So we, we can go woo woo wah wah into all of this place, which for me is what it's all about, really, if you're going to be a really good cooperator with this creative energy. However, in the day to day, I've got to live, and how can you make this practical for me? There are certain things that these reports will suggestions will give you based on where you are and what it thinks you would need. But some of the suggestions are around how to use visualization in a different way, or how to use
Hmm.
how do how are you using imagination as more of a creating more of a distraction for yourself versus how you're using imagination to continue to feed and build this idea that you have.
Yeah.
So again, there's practical examples of how to just slightly shift your attention, which for me that's where it always begins. And then in the external world, like go ahead and have fun working with different people, bring people in and just focus on a couple of different things while you're working with people. Or in one of the intuitive reports, this desire of really working with the land and bringing a lot of people in. One of the suggestions was maybe don't be attached that it has to be in the same way you want it to be or in the same location you want it to be.
Yeah.
So find other
Maybe
ways
it
to,
could be another group that
right.
would really be receptive to your ideas.
And
Yeah.
it talks about exploring, expanding, being curious.
Yeah.
And again, not holding on so tightly to this thing that we want it to be formed in a certain way because we have this idea of it. So there's practical ways of using everyday skills to remove yourself and look at it from a very different perspective and then give it some attention in a different way.
I think as our grip on this creation has to look and feel and sound and smell a particular way, as our grip loosens on that, it allows our creative mind to manifest it much more easily, much more quickly. So the options of where and how it can land are greater when
Mm-hmm.
you release that restrictive, it's got to look like this, or I don't want it.
So even just shifting it from being outside of yourself, I don't trust someone, even bringing it into this inner level of, but I do trust. I do trust that I can observe these things. I can observe X, Y, and Z, or I've had this experience, therefore this tells me this, or that person has done that. So the probability is this.
Hmm.
So even trust, um, again, it's the more you bring it inward, and not just trust, but any skill, the more you bring it inward, it will reflect back to you in a different way as well. And I think that's what both of these reports, these creative mind reports, are telling us about these very strong, very creative individuals that want to do really good things for the world
Hmm.
and for themselves. That
It's
it's,
suggested, along with the trust idea, is to trust in divine timing,
yeah,
which is, you could just say timing, versus the rushing and the trying to pressure this thing into being,
yeah.
trusting that things are unfolding, trusting that, maybe it doesn't have to manifest in my lifetime, in this particular lifetime. Maybe
Mhm.
pull back to a bigger, wider perspective and say, this is going to happen, and I'm just getting it going, and there'll be other people after me that will pick this up and keep it going. And maybe I reincarnate right back into this scenario and I keep it going that way. Who knows? But relaxing about it has to be me and it has to be now. That's that squeeze again actually restricts things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of contemporary writers, philosophers that can, add some weight to that, as well as some wonderful historical figures in textbooks that we have. But Eckhart Tolle talks about that, the presence of now.
Hmm.
Um, oh, I always forget how to pronounce his name. Michele, blah blah blah, something about into the flow. He also talks about that. But there's so many different, again, skills or tools out there available and different perspectives that will help a creative person just connect to one thing
Yeah.
that has them like be in the now. So this thing that you want to create, there's this timing that when you die, that tree that has been growing forever probably will be there when you're gone. And
Yeah.
it's still going to fulfill what it needs to fulfill.
Yeah.
So it's again how I don't know, Paul, what are your thoughts on this about how us as humans need to, that's a big lesson for us to learn of we're in this world to learn, to experience, to explore, to expand. And it's, I think this creative process, the creative mind report is will give you those tools to really deepen your relationship with that process.
Yeah. I think that's it in a nutshell with these reports. Depending on your culture that you're living in, I think we get messages that pretty strong messages that that's all well and good, just being a good creator, but he who creates the biggest things gets the most applause and the most notoriety and the most money and uh, gets all the goodies. And
Mhm.
that's a really strong message that we contend with here. I think especially males, and we've got two guys with these reports here that are, I'm sure at some level, both of them are grappling with that male perspective in this Western culture of, yeah, but okay, that's a really nice abstract, heady sort of assessment of creative mind, but I want to build a thing that people can point to and go, wow,
Yeah. Right.
that is in there. And we
Right.
have to contend with that in our egos individually and
And then
culturally. We
and
have
then
to
the
look at that.
irritation with other people,
Yeah.
of,
And then
ah,
the comparison starts.
that's it.
I
Yeah.
haven't created nearly what my brother has created or what my uncle did before me, and I feel bad about my creative
Or
ability because I haven't built this business empire. I have,
or if I did this myself, I could probably get it done better or
yeah,
easier. Or that's why,
faster. Yeah,
that's why I can't trust this other person to do what I think I can do. I mean, there's so much that's the
yeah.
conscious
All that
mind and
cultural programming that we
that comes
swim
into
around in constantly. It's hard to shed that. It's hard to just shake that off and just go, I am just a creator and I'm learning and understanding how to let it flow, let it go.
well, I think there's a suggestion that was given, and I think this is also universal for all of us, about forgiveness.
Hmm.
For growth, development, one of them specifically suggested that there's a theme of forgiveness that runs through the creative endeavors. And again, only this person can really understand what that means. So I'm I'm going a wider lens on what this forgiveness means. Um, but the suggestion here says that there are many opportunities that arise for self forgiveness and forgiveness of others and their judgments. It would be helpful for this one to consider this as well.
Yeah.
There's a
There's that
consider
judgments part again.
there's a considerable amount of freedom available to this one regarding this. So again, freedom from what? The things that we carry with us consciously.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
know, I
we've
know
talked
we've
about ego in a couple of episodes
and
now.
and patterns and
Yeah.
repeated ways. I
Freedom
mean,
from that crusty ego that we've set up, the story we tell ourselves about our goals and our loves and our limitations and our boundaries. um, if we allow those to be just a little bit softer, I'm not saying bust it completely wide open,
Right.
but just a little bit softer on the edges of those boundaries, we can allow all kinds of new experiences and most likely creative flow.
That's the flow that will come in. And it goes back to that space of creation that both of these people, these individuals want to flow with, cooperate with, harm. That mean there's something within both of them that says there's something more that not only I want to understand about myself, but there's also a trust that they both have that something else is the thing that they're wanting to be much more in companionship with.
Yeah.
And that is that creative source.
There's a part in each of these reports, it's built into the creative mind that talks about genius. I think we should address that
Yeah.
before we let people take a listen to these two reports and see if they can hear the things that we've been talking about. It asks about what would help cultivate genius in this person. And I think that's a pretty loaded word just at the outset. We have all kinds of, uh,
Well, that
oh,
guy's a genius. So,
yeah,
guy's
we
just a
think of
genius over the day.
Einstein or we
Yeah.
think of
Right.
Newton or, yeah,
Right.
these giants of genius. But really, I think genius is more in being able to, I think of this invisibility again, but allowing things to flow through you, I think is a hallmark of genius. When you can let this creative idea just whoosh right through, it shows. It shows in the painting. It shows in the business that you design. It shows in the relationship. Wherever you allow creative mind to fully express and fluidly express, there's genius there.
Wasn't the etymology of that Genesis is just it's the gene, the
The
Genesis.
genus, yeah,
It's
gotta be. Yeah.
it's coming from
The
the
origin.
origin, the
Yeah.
source, and going back to how we opened this episode with the wholeness. Like there's a seed idea. We're all whole in and of itself already. And as individuals, we're trying to express our understanding of what that wholeness is within us.
Hmm.
And so there's that return to that wholeness, that idea, that creation source, and moving through, having it move through is I think it's a holy endeavor. For me,
Yeah.
that's the holy grail, is really it's a holy endeavor to court that relationship. And it really will do you wonders. And
Yeah.
just it'll change everything in your life, your relationships, your everything.
Yeah.
Just
There's a time for movement and there's a time for um, receptivity. And then there's a time for movement again, and then there's a time for receptive receiving.
yeah.
And there's that ebb and flow, and there's that fluctuation of creation. And yeah, so that's our
Therefore,
homework for everybody, right? Is
ponder on this. Therefore, the non manifest and unmanifest as a point of attraction is as valuable as the manifest. This is a process for this one to awaken to and extend the gratitude to as well. This is the wholeness of creation. This one has ideas of this. This one is awakening to this. The timing of this is as it should be. The timing of this is as it should be. This is all.
very well, relax.
Very well. Relax.
All right, let's let them
Okay.
listen to it.
Thanks, Paul. See ya.
Once Upon a Quantum Leap is for your reference only. This podcast and the material is intended solely as educational information and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment of any health problem, financial, or legal advice.
You can listen to full episodes and find out about Paul and Capucine at onceuponaquantumleap.com. All reports shared on this show have been released with permission, and identifiers have been removed for individuals' privacy.
The intuitive reports referred to in each episode are available on our website, on the podcast page, and through links in our show notes. We encourage you to listen to those for greater context.
If you're interested in obtaining your own intuitive report, go to quantuminsight.co. That's quantuminsight.co. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.